Hey, what is up guys? It's your boy Speed here, and today I want to talk about some meta counters. We're going to be going over 5 heroes and then 1 item, and specifically talk about how to counter the meta. Obviously the goal of this video is so that when you encounter these heroes that are practically inevitable in pubs, you have a much better understanding of how to respond to them. I'm not only going to give hero suggestions, I'm also going to talk about item suggestions as well when it comes to countering these heroes. Not for every single one, but for, a few here and there. Also, I want to tell you guys that if you've been struggling with solo queue and you're looking to get to the next rank, I'm going to be able to help you. Like, literally, with the Game Leap website, I'm going to give you guys guides that are going to make it unbelievably clear on what you need to do. So if you've been stuck in the solo queue grind, you don't know what to do, and you want to become absolutely broken, but actually, you want to become much, much better at Dota, and you want to take it more seriously, the Game Leap website is going to help you do that. So click the link down below, I'm going to help you get to the next rank, and I'll see you there. Alright, so first off, I want to talk about Leshrac, one of the most popular offlaners and mid laners of the current patch. This hero seemingly does well every single game as it has one of the most reliable laning stages in Dota, a very, very clear fight timing, right? Timing to get active in the Bloodstone, and so this hero tends to do well. However, I do believe that there's a couple counters to this hero. I will admit that I think Tundra's approach to countering Leshrac was absolutely fantastic. I definitely think the Wraith Pact approach to Leshrac, having a hero that buys Wraith Pact and Pipe, is fantastic, because all of Leshrac's damage is AoE, right? He has to walk melee range, so he's always going to be in range of Wraith Pact, and he doesn't have the attack speed to kill the item, and then Pipe is pretty straightforward. On top of that, early Vessel is very good against this hero as well. Right, you want to try to shut down this hero with these either aura items or an early vessel to deal with the very, very crazy lifesteal that will come out on Leshrac when he hits that Bloodstone timing. And if you're having a decent game as a position 4, not even a great game, you can hit a vessel timing around minute 15, 16, 17 if it's the only item you're buying and you're playing Mirana pushing out waves, right? You can hit that timing, and then when Lesh gets Bloodstone around that timing, you already have a very clear response and know what to do when, he approaches the fight. And finally, in terms of heroes for Leshrac, the first one I really like is Broodmother. This seems a little bit weird because the spiders can die to Lesh's ulti, Pulse Nova, but you can buy a pipe to keep the spiders alive, and then you just rush Wraith Pact pipe. Honestly, it's not much more complex than that. Also, Leshrac can't gank you, and it's pretty hard for him to catch the spiders off guard. Right? He doesn't burst them, so I think that matchup's pretty easy. Then we have Sniper. High physical damage from a high range is very difficult for Lesh, and considering he can buy Shard and Hurricane Pike to never really get stuck next to Leshrac is absolutely fantastic and very key for that matchup. Alright, next up I want to talk about the only item of the video, but I think it's very important, and you're probably not going to be surprised to hear that that item is Wraith Pact. And how do you counter Wraith Pact as an item? I think a lot more teams will be, especially if this item gets nerfed, more willing to play against it, or even if it doesn't get nerfed hard enough or only a little, they'll learn ways and think about ways to kill the Wraith Pact in the fights, right? Because at the end of the day, it does only take 4 hits. It is only 4 hits. So some games, 4 hits is brutal. It's very hard to get those 4 hits. Other games, it's actually not that hard, and here's a couple of answers. First things first, illusions absolutely shred the Wraith Pact. They don't do reduced damage. I think they might do half, but either way, a PL or a Naga can just evaporate the Wraith Pact like that, right? No problem whatsoever. They just get rid of it. Naga Siren in particular is a hero that I really like against a lot of Wraith Pact buyers. For instance, it's okay against Brood in lane, it's okay against Brood in the game, and when a teamfight breaks out and the Brood puts down the Wraith Pact, you can Song. And you might be like, really? Do I really want to Song in the Siren to kill the Wraith Pact? Yeah, sure, why not? Right? This item is very expensive. You know what I mean? It's okay, it's not extremely expensive for how broken it is, but it's an expensive item, right? It's a lot of net worth. You're shutting down a significant portion of the enemy team's teamfight if you can Song and kill it. Same thing for PL. You can Doppelganger send your illusions. You can literally retarget and not kill a support just to take this item out early on into the fight because your illusions completely destroy it. Also, another support that particularly counters it is Snapfire with a little Shredder. The only problem is your other abilities don't make you want to be melee range per se. So you got to be a little bit careful. I wouldn't say this matchup's super great. Also, the heroes that buy Wraith Pact often buy Pipe too, which Snapfire doesn't love. That's not so great. And then finally, the last hero is Sniper. Sniper's cool for a couple reasons. He's great at hitting the Wraith Pact because he can hit it from anywhere. And then on top of that, he's usually out of the range of the Wraith Pact, so it doesn't even affect him very much. So he can kill it, and if he wants to kill someone else, right, finish a kill or something, he won't get affected by it typically. He just won't be in the radius. And so it's a solid matchup. Like, he's also pretty good against a lot of the unit heroes like Visage and Brood. I think he's pretty decent against these heroes. So yeah, overall, definitely a big fan of the sniper. Next up, let's talk about Broodmother, as she's come up a few times now. Broodmother is probably the most dominant offlaner of the current patch. And if you don't think that to be the case, you're either A, playing against Broodmothers who have no idea what they're talking about, or B, you have never played Brood well. You haven't practiced the hero enough. Because this hero is insane. Absolutely insane. Really good laner, and it buys really strong items. That's all you really need to know. Got buffed a lot as well. So, first hero that typically I think is the best lane counter in the game to Brood is Crystal Maiden. The reason why is Brood has one of the hardest level 2 spikes in the game in either Insatiable Hunger or Silken Bola. Both abilities are nuts. At level 3, Brood is a complete menace to most lanes. However, Crystal Maiden is the most threatening position 5 hero in the early levels by far. She has an attack speed slow in Crystal Nova as well as a movement speed slow, and then a root, which is crucial. Absolutely crucial, because the whole point of Brood is to click Insatiable Hunger or click Bola and then chase you down during the duration of those spells. If Brood can't do that, Brood can't at least dominate the lane, usually. Like, I'm not gonna tell, I've beaten a CM in lane before, I have, but it's your best bet. This is the matchup that I've noticed is your best bet for shutting down the Brood. Everyone else kind of struggles, like it's definitely kind of rough for the rest of the heroes, so yeah, definitely keep that in mind. Other than that, I think like Monkey King is okay. I don't think the lane's not the problem, right? Monkey beats Brood in the lane, so that's where I would kind of counter. You have to be a bit careful in the mid game. You definitely can die to like a stun plus Silken Bola and spiders, and Boundless doesn't insta-kill all the spiders unless you have certain items like Deso. So it's not, I've played this matchup, it's not, basically, it can be really bad for Brood if you're laning against something like CM Monkey King, and then they have a mid laner like Tusk or something, and they can just prevent you from ever taking the towers and building up spiders. Like, if they can do that, right, they have these very high tempo heroes that can just chase you around and kill your spiders and dominate you in the early levels, then Brood can have a tough game, right? And then all of a sudden, okay, maybe this hero isn't that dominant. If you can prevent it from getting into the jungle and, you know, just flash farming, which is what Brood typically wants to do. So yeah, you have to keep that in mind. And then finally, honestly, this one I'm not 100% sure on, but Dota 2 Pro Tracker, I've checked it a couple times now, and Spectre for some reason is one of the heroes that beats Brood relatively frequently. I can't say I exactly understand why. I really don't. I don't feel like Spectre necessarily counters Brood. The only thing I'll say is I guess Dispersion is probably decent against the spiders. I've heard Vanguard Dispersion kills the spiders and can allow you to dead lane the lane. So I've heard that before. Apparently it works, and maybe that's a good answer. And then I will say I think one of the ways to kind of beat Brood is to scale into the late game. Not that Brood is horrible, she can buy a lot of utility items with all the gold she gets, but I mean, you can kind of outscale her and kill her teammates while she doesn't necessarily do as much later on. So yeah, I guess the Spectre in that regard can maybe survive the lane, kind of dead lane the lane as well, even though Brood will probably still take your tier 1 because you can't really kill the spider, she can just sort of ignore you altogether. But yeah, I don't know, it's a cool concept. Next up, let's talk about Drow Ranger. How do you counter Drow Ranger, one of the most dominant right clickers in the current meta, one of the highest win rates on Dota buff at 54%. So a couple of the main heroes that really tend to do well against Drow are the heroes that get on top of her. That's no surprise, and I don't think I'm, making any of you have a revelation at this point by saying that, but a couple of heroes. Let's start with 2 offlaners. The first one being Night Stalker. This one is honestly, I didn't think it would be that great, but Drow doesn't pressure too hard early on, and if she does, she pressures like lower armor heroes. The problem about Drow against Night Stalker is in the early levels, as long as you buy a couple mangoes and like tangos, you've like 6 base armor, high base HP regen, and then a couple regen items, and as long as your position 4 is like a decent trader or drags the wave, the Drow probably won't beat you in the lane. She probably won't. And then when it comes to nighttime, you're obviously a pretty big problem for the Drow Ranger. You can get on top of her, right? And that's the case throughout the entirety of the game. You can try to get on top of her with that, with your silence, and then she can't gust away. And that's really, really a problem, because that's the way Drow often protects herself, gust. But it's such a long duration silence where, you might be able to get on top of her and stick on top of her. Now, of course, she can buy Hurricane Pike, and that is one thing that I will say makes this matchup not completely unplayable for Drow. But the vision game and the fact that you're going to have a decent game against the Drow in lane, right? You're probably not going to get kicked out, probably going to get off to a good start, and then you can scout her out for your team in the late game team fights is really, really key, right? It's really great. Kind of on the same note, and honestly, a lot of the points are the exact same, so I won't get too much into it, but is Centaur. Sure, it's less about the vision game, but, Stampede is just incredible. While it might seem like, oh, it's too cheesy, right? Is that really good enough? She can pike away. it doesn't, yeah, just sticking on top of Drow is too important. Because if you stick on top of her, her ulti gets disabled. That's how her ultimate works. She doesn't get the bonus agility if you're directly on top of her. So then she just can't do much. And so Centaur ulti, even if you get slowed by frost arrows, he can pop Stampede, you can close the gap and prevent her from really doing anything significant. So yes, this matchup definitely plays out well. And finally is Marcy. In the laning stage, a lot of Marcy lanes just can dominate Drow very hard. You know, just hopping on top of Drow, who doesn't have the greatest armor, bad movement speed, and is a ranged hero at the end of the day, so doesn't have built-in stout shield, just gets dominated by Marcy in a lot of lanes. Like something like Dawnbreaker Marcy completely crushes Drow. Something like Brood Marcy crushes Drow. Nature's Prophet Marcy does quite well against Drow. I mean, there's just a lot of lanes. And then in terms of the late game, the BKB timing on the Marcy, Drow just can't man up. Even if you only have a BKB and Drow is 5k, 6k net worth ahead of you, it just doesn't matter. You're going to be able to largely man up as long as you can stick on top of her. And that's the thing about this matchup. It's you just disable the ulti, completely burn out Drow's timing, and just allow your team to close the gap as you just punch her with your ulti and a BKB at minute 23. Next up is Riki. This hero is apparently doing great in pubs as of late, and I see a lot of players struggling with it. I even just played against a support Riki recently, and it was really crazy to me how much this hero actually did with just a Shard Aether Lens and some of the talents, like some of the Smokescreen talents, because man, when you get an Octarine Core on Riki, I think Smokescreen's like a 5-second cooldown. It literally lasts for longer than the cooldown, and it's quite large because you have a Smokescreen Radius talent. So this hero, I'm not saying it's mainly played as a support. I just want to give you guys a heads up that that's like something interesting you could try if you're a support player and you're looking for some ideas. I really think it's quite okay, if not good. It provides a lot of vision and setup with the Sleep Dart as well, so pretty cool combos you can do with it too. But a couple of counters to Riki. The first one is Naga Siren. Naga Siren rushing Manta style means that Riki doesn't really threaten you. You also have extremely high armor, and as a result, Smokescreen from Riki and Riki's damage never does anything to Naga, and when she gets a heart, you do 0 to Naga. So this matchup never favors Riki in terms of him killing her. Yeah, the Smokescreen can kind of be useful to prevent Song in certain ganks, but it's not that great, right? It's not that great. And you might think, oh, but the miss chance against the net. Yes, but there's one major reason why this is flawed. Number one, she doesn't have to commit, so the Smokescreen can often get wasted. She can kind of just kite around it. And the second reason is Bloodthorn. It gives you a 100% hit chance, right? You cannot miss if someone's Bloodthorn. So if you find a Riki who doesn't have a Manta Style or a BKB yet, let's say he goes Diffusal, Ags, and he's not super farmed, and this Naga gets a pretty early Bloodthorn, and he gets Bloodthorned and netted, he's completely dead, right? He's completely dead. So he gets really countered by Orchid, right? And Orchid is the most popular second item purchased on Naga Siren. So he's completely countered by Naga's favorite item, or second favorite item. Then he's very, very countered by her typical fourth item, which is completing the Bloodthorn. It very much destroys him. Manta's good against him to deal with the Diffusal slow. It's like there's not, and Net is extremely good for Riki. By the way, even Naga Siren ulti is generally good against Riki. It's gonna allow you to burn out the Smokescreen duration if he goes on a support, heal them up with your Shard if you have that already, and then set up on him with plenty of stuns, which typically he won't have a BKB for. So this matchup, honestly, in my opinion, apparently the win rate is not completely horrendous. It's like bad. It's like 41% in favor for Naga, right? Riki loses most of the games, but I thought it would be even worse. Next up is instant disable supports. Heroes like Lion, Shaman, and Bane. Now to be fair, Riki can sometimes kill these heroes if he gets the jump, but if you aren't a great Riki player or the people around you make mistakes, which they're gonna, the instant disables are simply a hard counter to Riki. This hero relies on being mobile and jumping around, so if you can get off a Hex or a Sleep or a Grip, it's going to create big issues for a hero that needs to kite in and out. So typically the instant disable supports do well against Riki. And finally is cheap defensive items. Don't overthink it too much. If you're against Riki and you're playing Shaman, please don't rush an Ags. Get a Force Staff, get a Ghost Scepter, and just kite him out. If you can get away from the Smokescreen, this hero typically doesn't do enough to threaten a lot of certain heroes, and so please buy the cheap defensive items such as the Ghost Scepters and the Force Staffs. And finally, the last meta hero I want to talk about countering, one of the highest heroes on Dota buff, I think it's either highest or second highest win rate currently on Dota buff, is Silencer. So how do you counter Silencer? Let's start with an offlaner, and it's Broodmother. I know, but still, there's no way around this. Global Silence does nothing to Brood, nothing. does nothing to Brood, you solo kill Silencer, he can't defend himself from spiders. Silencer has to chip you down in lane, isn't good against Brood's regen, so there's nothing good. There's nothing good in this matchup for Silencer, it's horrible. Then we have Slark as a carry. Just having the Dispel is great, being able to stick on top of the Silencer and kill him early on into the fight without having your team overcommit is really important as well. Right, basically the Slark can kite in and out against the Silencer ulti, and that's pretty freaking nice. Right, the typical build nowadays is Diffusal into Axe into BKB, sometimes Echo, depends on the game. But basically that's the most common build, and it's very good against Silencer with the Dark Pack. Even the Dark Pack cooldown at level 10, you can take it and just be very hard for Silencer to kill. And you can get on top of him and force a bad global. And then finally, the last item that we have to talk about against Silencer is Lotus. Don't be stupid. I don't know why people don't buy the obvious items. Sometimes I think players really like to overcomplicate Dota, and they'll just purchase items such as, I don't know, like Force Staff, or they'll buy something weird like a Yule's, and it's like, oh, Yule's is good against Silencer, but it's not instant. It's just not instant. And yeah, it's a little bit cheaper, but if you have mana boots, then it's not even cheaper. And so, yeah, just keep Lotus in mind. It's so incredibly good. It's brutally low cooldown, right? Lotus is a lower cooldown than Yule's. It gives you good stats, it allows you to reflect other abilities, it can reflect the last word, which is pretty nice as well, and it dispels every single ability. Arcane Curse, Last Word, and Global Silence all can get dispelled by Lotus, so don't overthink it. If you happen to be against Silencer, and there are other things to dispel as well, you should consider buying this item early, even on offlaners, and definitely on supports. But alright, thank you guys so much for watching this video on the meta counters, hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace! And that's all, but remember, before you leave, come on, before you tune out, subscribe to the Game Leap website where we are going to help you get to the next rank. If you're stuck, click the link down below, and I'm out. Peace.